No.
It's 5 o'clock, Charlotte, and this is WBTV News 3.
It was total gridlock at the Charlotte airport today on the runways, on the taxiways, in the terminal, and up and down the entire East Coast. It's all because of a child's toy.
Plus, at the Rae Carruth trial, prosecutors broke new ground today, asking Sharika Adams' father about the day she died. Also, a major development just in the last few minutes of the murder trial. We want to take you live inside courtroom 3301. Good evening. I'm Tanya Bendix.
And I'm Paul Cameron. This is a major development. Michael Kennedy, the alleged driver of the car in which the bullets came from, killing Sharika Adams a month after the shooting. Michael Kennedy has moments ago admitted, coming on the stand, that he has no deal with the state of North Carolina, and yet he was there the night and he's telling his story. Let's listen in.
Back to his house. Okay.
Do you know, be a good stopping place here? Certainly, Your Honor.
Okay.
Members of the jury, I'm going to allow you to go in just a moment for the afternoon recess until 9:30 in the morning. During the overnight recess, again, please keep in mind and abide by my instructions to you with regard to not talking.
Obviously, the jury is about to be let go for the day. The judge giving those instructions. We just missed a moment ago. Michael Kennedy admitting on the stand that Rae Carruth asked him the day before the shooting if he knew where he could get a gun. Also, he asked him if he could get a hoopty. A hoopty, as he described on the stand, is a car that is not flashy.
Of the events of this trial or attempted to
listening in to see exactly what the judge is saying as well. Of course, the picture of David Rudolph, the defense attorney for Rae Carruth, shaking his head next to him there. It has been dramatic testimony just in the past 5 minutes.
You're free to step out.
Let's go live to our Steve Crump, who's been following this trial. And Steve, this has been dramatic developments.
Paul, this is just absolutely major. A bombshell, as you put it. Kennedy got on the stand roughly about 20 minutes or so ago at 4:40, and it took a lot of people by surprise. Simply to say there was some indication, some buzz that something like this could very well happen. Shortly before the afternoon session resumed this afternoon, Kennedy's counsel, Butch Frazier, was talking to the clerk, and at one point during one of the breaks, we understand that he was in a meeting with the judge in closed chambers as the jury went out for some procedural matter. So at about 4:40 this afternoon, Michael Kennedy took the stand, and here's what he had to say after being sworn in.
And he was telling me about this girl that he had got pregnant, which I found out later was Sharika. And he was saying that she was trying to juice him for money, and he was already paying like almost $5,000 in child support, and he didn't want to pay another $5,000 in child support. And he asked me, did I remember a meeting that I took him to, I think it was in June or July, at a Waffle House on Independence. And I did remember that time, and he said the guy that was in the U-Haul truck, he had paid him to beat up Sharika so that she would lose the baby. And he was saying that he hadn't done it yet, and he had already paid him. And he said that he needed a gun because he wanted to do it that night.
Obviously, very damaging testimony. It has been a very busy day of testimony, and we'll find out a little bit more about what Michael Kennedy had to say. Our Sean Hightower is in the courtroom, and she'll have a live report coming away at 6 o'clock. In terms of what's been happening today, as we said, busy day of testimony, but there have been a number of people who have been called to the stand. Among them, Tracy Willard. She continued her testimony this morning, describing how Sharika Adams' handwritten notes point the finger of blame at Rae Carruth. Farrell Blaylock, who heard the shots and found a wounded Sharika Adams in his front yard, and Melvin Billingsley, who placed his co-defendants Michael Kennedy and Stanley Abraham at Carruth's house hours before the shooting. But this afternoon, there was a very emotional testimony that came from inside the courtroom 3301 here in the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Jeff Mooney told the jury about what he found out the night that Sharika Adams was shot. Trial team reporter Edward Lawrence followed that testimony this afternoon. Edward.
Well, Jeff Mooney has not talked publicly since before Sharika Adams died. His testimony was very emotional and very damaging to Rae Carruth. Mooney took the stand about 2:30 this afternoon. First, the prosecution asked him about his daughter. Mooney outlined the relationship with Carruth, what happened happened after the shooting, and he told his daughter, or what his daughter told him happened. Then the defense cross-examined him, alluding to the fact that he may be wrong about the facts about the shooting. Most of his testimony centered around the hospital right after the shooting.
Did he approach either you or Wanda?
No, he did not.
Did he ask you what had happened?
No, he did not.
Did he ask you about Sharika?
No, he did not.
Did he ask you about his baby?
No, he did not.
What was his demeanor at this point?
He sat on the floor. He was fidgety and seemed agitated. My wife wanted to ask if Rae knew something about the young lady that Sharika had a run-in with on Sunday.
And what, if any, was his response?
He responded that, yes, that was her in the room, and it apparently was Candy.
Did someone else then ask any questions?
I think Sandra spoke next and said, I'm just going to ask you, did you shoot my baby?
Did you learn at some point that morning at the hospital that the police considered Mr. Carruth to be the prime suspect in this?
After Investigator Price and the sergeant had spoken with Sharika.
You didn't hear before then that the police were looking for Mr. Carruth, and then someone in your family had to tell them, wait a minute, you don't need to look for him, he's right here at the hospital?
I don't recall anyone saying that they were looking for him.
And David Rudolph tried to point out that it was Sharika Adams' family that told her father that Carruth was involved before Sharika Adams ever had a chance to communicate with him. Now, Jeff Mooney never admitted that. He was very hostile towards David Rudolph, and then when the prosecution was talking with him, he got emotional. This is Edward Lawrence, WBTV News 3, reporting live for the trial team.
All right, Edward, thanks much. While Jeff Mooney's testimony was very emotional this afternoon, the prosecution also put other witnesses on the stand to help their case. Here's some of what they had to say.
Before we left his house, he called someone, which is an S/1, and ampersand, said we were leaving now.
What'd you hear?
I heard gunshots, very quick, bam, 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 bam. Did not count them. I don't know how many, several.
Did they come from the, which side, the railroad side or the McAndrew side of your house?
The sound I heard, I believe, came from the railroad side. As I started to the car, I got to the front fender, which was just 4 or 5 feet from my stoop, and about 6 police cars come flying into and stopped on the curb, and they started running across my lawn to this car, and so I stopped, and they physically opened the 2 front doors.
Now, at the point that you got up there to the front of the car, as the police were arriving, were you able to see anything in the car at that point?
Yeah, when they opened the door, I realized why I couldn't see in. The driver's glass was shattered real bad.
Here, wall to wall in this ticketing area, but it seems as if the delays are getting a little bit longer. If you check out that tote board over there, you can see 1 hour, 2 hour, that as these, bear in mind that this being U.S. Airways hubs, any flights in and out of here and any delays here are going to affect flights up and down the East Coast and maybe across the country. Now, how this whole thing began, well, airport officials say they were simply doing their job. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of passengers were given little information about why they were made to wait for hours outside the airport's terminals.
We were supposed to leave at 8. They didn't tell us anything, and then all of a sudden they came on and said that there was a security breach and they needed to take everyone off the plane.
The evacuation began about 9 this morning. The reason? Security saw what they thought was a gun inside a suitcase.
A family of 4 traveling with a 9-year-old child. The child had a toy gun in his own suitcase, which had a long handle on it.
But before officials could physically check the bag, the family made off with it, leaving officials with the worry that a gun was loose in the airport. So they made a tough choice: empty the terminals and rescan every passenger's bag. The process took hours, causing major delays. No flights were allowed to take off, and planes that landed were not allowed to release their passengers. Surprisingly, though, many travelers weren't as annoyed as you might expect.
I guess if it saves my life, I don't, you know, I'm not in any rush. It's just vacation, so.
A recurring message: better to arrive late than not arrive at all. Now, that sentiment may change a little if delays continue. That in mind, we have a couple of things to pass on to you. This holiday weekend, 850,000 North Carolinians are expected to travel. And considering that, the airport is recommending that you call 3 hours ahead if you're flying by air, and that you check in 1.5 hours before your flight takes off. That will help things. That's a little bit longer than normal, but that will help things move along a little bit more smoothly this holiday weekend. We should ask